Happy April showers, YouTube. I am back, and it's been a while since you've seen me wear this shirt. So you might have forgotten what that means. Well, what that means is me and my buddy Simon, Civ, the Pie Man, have completed 3 more retro games on our Bill 69 quest that we started oh so long ago. Our quest to defeat completely 69 retro games, a lot of which we knew, some of which we didn't. Um, it's almost to fruition. Games 63, or no, I guess 64 through 66 are what we're looking at today. And the first of these games is a game that was well known to us as kids, probably one of the most recognizable NES titles of all time. You look at the cover, you hear the name, you know exactly what people are talking about. It is Bayou Billy. Bayou Billy was released in 1989 for the NES, and it was released by Konami. Now, Konami was one of the best game developers at the time, and they're still going pretty strong, I think. And the thing about Konami games is that they're just like Capcom games. They have their very distinct graphic system, sound, gameplay, and this was right in Konami's wheelhouse. This was a tried and true Konami kind of title. Now, the story behind Bayou Billy is that you control the game's main hero, Billy West, otherwise known as Bayou Billy. He was a former soldier turned mercenary. He's led a bit of a checkered life, and he's from the New Orleans area. So during his days of mercenarying, I guess you would say, he kind of crossed a local crime boss named Gordon. Now, Gordon is out to get Bayou Billy, and in order to really get under his feathers and ruffle him up and get him on the warpath, Gordon decides to kidnap Billy's girlfriend, Annabelle. So that's basically, classic tale, just like the original Double Dragon game. The bad guys come and punch Marion in the gut, haul her off, and Billy Lee's got to take the fight to the bad guys, right? So this is a classic tale of you stole my woman, you better watch out, right? So you're basically tasked with tracking down Gordon and getting your woman back and ending this threat once and for all. So Bayou Billy consists of 9 total stages. Mostly it's a side-scrolling kind of beat 'em up sort of thing, but the really interesting thing about Bayou Billy back in the day, what really set it apart, is that there are a few stages scattered throughout the game. I think there's maybe 2 of each of these. It also has a couple stages where it's a targeting system. So there's a targeting reticle on the screen that you move around with the controller and you shoot people as they come up, just like the original Operation Wolf game. It's really your reaction time and how quick you can get to a target, how accurate you can be, and take out the guys before they kill you, right? So I think there's 2 stages of that, and then there's also a driving stage where excuse me, I wasn't yawning at all until I get in front of a camera. It's just what it is. So you get in a Jeep, and just like the original like pole position game or Top Gear, it's you're driving along a road and you have to make turns and stuff, and you have to avoid like a helicopter's trying to drop bombs on you, and there's also cars and other obstructions in the road that you have to avoid. So you basically just have to avoid all these dangers and maintain enough health until you've reached the end of the road, so to speak. So throughout the game, there's no bosses in the 2 driving stages. I think there's 2, and I think there's 2 targeting stages. But at most of the end of the side-scrolling and the targeting stages, there is usually a boss at the end. And as you're making your way through the game, you start in the swamps, and then you kind of get to the highway or the roads, and then you end up on Bourbon Street in New Orleans before you make it through there and get to Gordon's mansion and eventually confront the bad guy. So during your journey, there is a lot of stuff to look out for in the side. There's no pickups in the driving stages. You basically just drive and avoid. But in the side-scrolling stages, there's lots of stuff. There's sometimes you defeat enemies and they'll give up an armored vest, so you can put it on, which helps you not lose hit points when you get hit. There's quite a few weapons, a whip, a pistol, a knife, a wooden board. Maybe there's more that I'm forgetting. And also food in the form of a cooked turkey helps replenish your health. And I think that might be it for the side-scrolling stages. There might be another one I'm forgetting, but you get the gist of it. And then in the targeting stages, there are little icons that'll pop up, and if you shoot them with your gun, you'll get that benefit. So there is a med pack which refills your health. There is, I forget what it takes the form of. Maybe it's a bulletproof vest as well, but it just makes you temporarily invulnerable. Oh, sorry, to taking damage. And there's also an ammo refill, and there's also a free man icon. So the free man icons are key. And so yeah, so if you can just master these various different game elements, make your way through the game, confront Gordon and his goons, get your woman back, you have completed Bayou Billy. So Bayou Billy is kind of a legendary game. I remember it as a kid, first and foremost, before I ever played the game, was when I was reading through my comic books. Back in the day, comic books always used to have ads every 5 or 6 pages, and of course, being the ones I read back then being more catered toward kids, like G.I. Joe, Transformers, Turtles, and stuff like that. Well, not Turtles so much. Well, yeah, I guess Turtles would have been before Bayou Billy. There were a lot of toy and video game ads, so I remember Bayou Billy ads in comic books like crazy. So, you know, I had a very early recognition of this game before I'd even played it. And then once I played it, I loved it. But the thing about Bayou Billy, be warned, it's fucking hard as shit. It is very, very hard. You really have to take your time, be certain. And if you get frustrated and just trying to rush things, you're going to get your ass kicked like crazy. It is so hard. So it's a pretty good accomplishment. Like, of all these games, game number 64 that would have been, we've completed quite a few hard games along the way. I'm not sure which one I would consider the hardest, but this one's got to be up near the top somewhere. It is difficult, which makes it all the more satisfying. So Bayou Billy was number 1. Next up, a game that Civ played a lot when we were younger, but I had never really heard of. Maybe I'd heard of it, but I didn't really know much about it. I may have heard the name here and there, but didn't really know anything about it. And the game in question is called, excuse me, I gotta get another eye out. Fuck me. The game in question is called Super Turrican. Super Turrican was released in 1993 on the Super Nintendo, and it's a run and gun style of affair with lots going on the screen. Very much reminds me of kind of futuristic Contra sort of thing. So the story behind it is that you are a soldier in the United Planets Earth Forces, or something like some federation of soldiers, and you are tasked with fighting off this big malevolent presence known as the Machine. It has set up shop in the orbit of the planet Katakis and is causing all sorts of mayhem on the planet. So as a soldier in these forces, you are tasked with donning one of the Turrican suits. So that's what Turrican is. It's a kind of like a metal mech suit that gives you all sorts of power and ammo and stuff. And getting onto Katakis, fighting your way through all these enemies, and ridding the planet of this menace known as the Machine. So Super Turrican is it consists of 4 different stages, each of which is broken down into 3 separate levels. So overall, there's about 12 total levels in this game, with each kind of end level resulting in a big boss sort of thing. So you start on the planet's surface, then you get into a factory, then you go to like a frozen tundra before you enter this alien hive. So as you're making your way through the game, there's lots of stuff to look out for. There's these orange orbs that give you extra points. I don't know what the points do. Maybe they give you extra men. I don't know, but points don't concern me like they did when I was a kid. And I was like, I got this many points on this game. Like, now it's like, no, did I beat the game? That's all that fucking matters, right? You can also get a little icon of yourself as a free man. hearts refill your health gauge. There's 3 different colored orbs that are your weapons. So the red one gives you like a spreader gun, the blue one gives you this kind of wide laser blast, and then the yellow one gives you this fire blast weapon, which also bounces off walls. And so as you're making your way through this game, oh, there's also a blue wave icon, which is your special weapon. So when you use your special weapon, it's like these 2 kind of blue waves that originate within you and go out to each side of the screen and just kind of obliterate everything along the way. And there's also this other icon, a yellow one, I don't know what it is, but it basically gives you like temporary invulnerability, like this shield sort of thing. So yeah, so then as you get out into the game and you're making your way through the levels, the enemies mostly start off as like mostly robots, a lot of them anthropomorphic, but there are some that are based on like insects and animals and stuff like that. And then the early bosses are also more robotic in nature, but as you make your way through the game, they start to become more organic in nature, and you eventually run up against like animals and mutants and aliens and stuff like that as the story kind of progresses and evolves. And so yeah, so if you make your way through all these 12 levels and eventually get to the end guy, you can free Katakis of this machine and restore balance to the planet. Now, this game was developed by Factor 5, who I don't really know. I've never heard that name before. But apparently Turrican is a pretty extensive series. I think this is like, Super Turrican was like the 5th game in the series, give or take. So it did pretty well for itself, and it's somewhat extensive. So I guess people like them, and I see why. Like I said, Simon loved this game as a kid, but I wasn't really familiar with it. I probably did play it with him at some point because we played games all the time. I just don't remember it for some reason. But I'm glad it was one of those ones. Like I said, a lot of the games we played during this whole quest are games we knew, but there are a handful that we didn't know, and this is one of the ones that I personally didn't know. But I'm glad we played it because it was pretty good. So, and like I said, it's a lot like a Contra game. Even the way you get weapons, you know, you have these different orb pods that you get, which gives you these different weapons. Maybe not quite as extensive as Contra in terms of the different weapons, but pretty close. And just the way you can hold down the button and just let the bullets fly, and there's just shit going on every screen, all across the screen. The only difference between Contra is, like on Contra, you could, when you're shooting, you can move your weapon in all directions and shoot above, below, wherever, right? Whereas this one, it's just straight line shooting. So that would have been a nice feature to have in this game. But regardless, it's still a pretty good masterpiece. Now, the last game, which we just beat actually a week ago today, actually, and it is, this one's a little bit funny. It's a retro game, but it's not a retro game. I'll explain what that means as soon as I introduce it. Drum roll, please. Double Dragon 4. Now, what makes Double Dragon 4 a retro game but not a retro game? The answer is that it was only released in 2017, developed by Arc System Works. So it was only made, what, 7 years ago? A far cry from a lot of these games that are late 80s, early 90s that we used to play. But they developed it in a style that fit right in with the Double Dragon series. It looks just like the other Double Dragon games. When I downloaded it on my Switch, I thought, how the hell did I miss this game along the way, right? Fuck. Purchase. Not knowing that it had just recently come out, right? So I was kind of floored when I eventually found out it was a newer game that looks like an older game. So that is why it is retro, but not retro. Now, the story behind it is that it actually fits into the series right after Double Dragon 2. So Jimmy Lee and Billy Lee have fought off the Black Warriors and defeated them, and they are now going across the land, spreading their martial arts philosophy of Sosetsuken. Now, as they're out in the San Francisco area driving, they are pursued by another vehicle, and this vehicle eventually catches up to them and they get attacked. Now, they learn through this, when they defeat these enemies, that the what remains of the Black Warriors have teamed up with another gang called the Renegades, who are led by the Okada sisters, and they are out to get Billy and Jimmy Lee and finish them off for good this time. And of course, throughout the game, along the game somewhere, they also kidnap Marion once again. So why mess with tradition? And even during the game, I can't remember which stage it's after, they show the exact same original cutscene from the original Double Dragon game where they walk up to her in the street and then put her over his shoulder. It was so cool when that happened. I was like, oh my god, big time shout out, right? So that was kind of cool. So that's basically it. You travel across the land. You start in San Francisco. You eventually end in Japan, where the final fight takes place. So in terms of the game, there are 12 total stages. Like I said, starts in San Francisco, ends in Japan, and along the way, I think there's usually a boss at the end of each level, or sometimes it's just a horde of people you have to fight. And because it's the Black Warriors teaming up with the Renegades, there are some unfamiliar faces. Most of the enemies are just people of some sort, whether they're martial arts guys or thugs or whatever, right? So there's some unfamiliar faces that come with the Renegades, but the Black Warriors, there's lots of familiar faces from preceding Double Dragon games, like Abobo, Will, Chin, Linda, Roper, Burnov, all those guys are in there. So it's kind of like familiar with some unfamiliar mixed in, which kind of makes it a lot of fun. And as you make your way through the game, Double Dragon's not a game where you get a lot of pickups. There's no health supplements. You lose your health, you've lost your health. There's no getting it back. There's no shields, there's no armor, there's no free men. The only thing you can pick up in this game, just like with the other Double Dragon games that came before it, are weapons. Now, there's lots of them to be had. There's, God, what is there? There's knives, explosives, crates, rocks, tires, and of course, don't forget, the classic, dreaded, ultra-destructive cardboard box. It's my favorite, personally. Baseball bats too, I think. Baseball bats are in there. So that's really the one thing you can pick up. But weapons are, if you can use weapons proactively in these Double Dragon games, it really helps, because they finish people off a lot faster than your regular attacks, right? So in terms of your regular attacks, it's the typical Billy and Jimmy Lee moves. You got your punch, your kick, your jump kick, your back kick, all those usual moves, but they really spiced up the special moves. There's 3 different special attacks you can use in the game, and you can use them at any time, so that makes it a lot more fun. And they're a lot easier to use than some of the other ones in the past. And the other thing it has is this move where if you get attacked and you get knocked down and you take some damage and you're down on the ground, if you press the button at the right time when you get up, you do this really powerful flying knee that just sends people, like if you're on one side of the screen, it sends them to the other side and out the other side of the screen. They eventually come back if they still had enough health. But it's just so damaging, and you can keep them going consecutively across the screen if you time your button presses right. So you can just take out guys like crazy. And if there's multiple in front of you, they all go for a ride, right? So it created quite a few laughs along the way. I gotta admit that we fucking loved that move. It was so much fun. So yeah, you make your way through the 12 stages, use the weapons. Eventually, at the end of the 12th stage, you face off against a double boss fight against the Okada sisters, and to end the game. So this game, like I said, fit right in with the Double Dragon series. I love Double Dragon. I still remember the day I got it for my birthday when I was just a kid, probably late 80s, I think it was. Civ, his older brother Pisueus, or Josh is his real name, he was over that day, and it was just the two of us. And I still remember I got Double Dragon, I was given it, I unwrapped it, and then we were both like, what the fuck? And they're like, well, do you want cake before you play? And we were like, oh shit, we gotta have cake. So they cut us pieces of cake, and we literally stood in the kitchen and we're just like, how do you it was the fastest I've ever eaten cake in my life, because then we were like into the game and up there and we just played all fucking night. It's one of those series that is one of my absolute favorites. It's not the top, but it's pretty close. Like Mega Man's easily my favorite video game series where there's multiple games, but Double Dragon's going to be right there nipping at Mega Man's heels with a few other series, right? So that's how good it is. So to get this game gifted so many years later that fits into that series and looks just like it and plays just like it, and it is so much fun, was it really was an actual gift. Yeah. So that those are games 64 through 66. We got one more post to do, 3 more games to beat. We know what 3 they are. I'm not sure what order we're going to do them in yet. The 3 coming up, one of them is going to be super fucking hard. One of them we don't know because we played this game as a kid and just never got that far into it because you just don't really know where to go and what to do. It's kind of confusing that way. And then the other one, which I think is what we're going to play last, because it's got a bit of nostalgic history for us, even more so than a lot of the others for certain reasons. And it's also a bit, it's long and it's very maze-like sort of thing. So we've never been able to beat it. We've got into it pretty deep, but we didn't know how close we were to the end. So these are going to be 3 games that all 3 of them are going to be so satisfying to beat when we eventually do it. So the last 3 are going to be pretty special. It's going to be a really good post to finish everything off, and I can't wait to do it. But that being said, with how hard these games are, I'm not sure what the timing's going to look like in terms of when we're going to get around to actually beating all 3 of them. So it could be a while before we see my last Bill 69 video being posted. But hey, for you, we'll be hard at work. Trust me on that. Toodles.
Meow.